Hi, this is Gary Collins, the creator of the Primal Power Method, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Smith. He did some early research with Dr. Loren Cordain, so I thought it would be interesting to have him on and discuss a few things. For those unfamiliar with you, Dr. Smith, would you explain kind of your background and how you worked with Dr. Loren Cordain in the beginning?
Sure. I actually originally from the UK. I might sound a little Australian. That's because I lived with Australians while I was in Colorado State University with Loren. But I was in the UK. I went to a big sports college called Loughborough University. Did an undergrad in sports science and did a teaching certificate after that. And a lot of the professors there had come to the States and done master's degrees in universities out here. And so a lot of us were very keen to kind of follow that route. And that's indeed what happened. So I came out to Colorado State University and started a master's degree. And Loren was actually my advisor for my master's degree. And it's kind of funny, I look back on that and boy, how many research projects I'd love to do now on Paleolithic nutrition. But at that time, it was very early days for Loren in researching Paleolithic nutrition, and it was just a sort of brief part of some of our discussions. It wasn't until I finished my doctorate and kind of at the end of my doctorate that I really started working with Dr. Cordain on the Paleolithic nutrition. So basically what happened was my doctorate was after the sports science degree. I transferred over to the physiology department, and my doctorate was in cardiovascular disease with an emphasis in atherosclerosis. So I did a lot of animal research, and it obviously dietary related. We were working with atherogenic diets and looking at intervention of trying to improve it. And it was kind of a pivotal moment. And as I was, giving my presentation, everyone's like, "What are you going to do after this?" And the postdoc didn't interest me that much. My first paper published in the Journal of Essential Fatty Acid Leukotrienes and Prostaglandins, a bestseller.
Oh yeah,
how many people are going to read that? And I just felt my niche was going to be getting into the real world and educating people, because the biggest thing that I learned from the research with the swine was to not eat a bad diet in the first place, rather than later on trying to work on intervention. But it was a fantastic experience going through the research process. And so anyway, I then ended up doing an effective postdoc with Loren. I became an affiliate faculty in the department of what then was exercise and sports science. It's been renamed since. And so I'd obviously been, having Loren as my advisor through my master's, I was always interested in where he was at with the Paleolithic nutrition. And It was funny, in those days, he was kind of like the mad professor in his office, and I'd go in to see him and, we'd just chat, and he'd be like, "God, I've just seen this new paper," and as he's alluded to at different times, the dairy file was one filing cabinet. Now he could probably fill a room just on dairy alone. So I saw the progression of all of this, and it just made perfect sense to me from the get-go. So I became kind of a part of a team, and I started doing lectures almost on his behalf to different organizations. And at one of the lectures, there was another gal, Lim Tui, was interested, and we kind of ended up forming a team. We published a few papers together, and we used to meet maybe I'd say once a week, and we just kind of have an hour to 2 hours sit down and talk about different papers. That what we had really done is go, look, we think this is a good template. It makes sense. There's nothing necessarily at this point supporting it, or there was a few things, and we were just trying to play the mad scientist and take a jigsaw piece and put it onto this puzzle and go, hey, this piece of research over here fits this model that we have.
Okay.
And myself, very interested in just more the clinical application. I was always keen when we started doing these lectures, we'd get calls from people going, hey, I'm interested in this diet you're talking about, and particularly with autoimmune patients. And I think that was where our initial research was going. And the thought process was it the newer foods from a genetic perspective, the grains, the dairy, and the legumes, causing autoimmune disease?
Okay.
So I was the kind of volunteer, hey, I'll go talk to them. And I remember sitting with a number of, I remember one, when we'll talk about the case study of this, a lady with multiple sclerosis. And, I sat in there and said, look, here's this diet that we think is going to be really good. I can't guarantee it's going to work for your MS. I have no idea really, but we think there's this hypothesis. And this is where I can say to so many people, like, but here's what I can guarantee you. It's a really healthy diet. If we analyze this diet, there's no deficiencies. You've got everything you need. There's just no negatives. So it's not going to do any harm. and it may help your MS. And guess what? It did help her MS, and it helped people with Lou Gehrig's disease. And then of course it starts the floodgates. People hear this and they tell someone else, and of course at some point, it then reached critical mass, and we are where we are today. So, but I feel very privileged. I'm pre-Rob Wolf in terms of knowing Loren. Rob has probably done a lot more in terms of getting it out there with his success. But on the other hand, I wonder how many people I've actually influenced, because I'm on the Tireless Performance Institute Nutritional Advisory Board, and so I'm often teaching within the classes, and I also done the World Girl Fitness Summit. We are, hundreds and hundreds of healthcare professionals come to that. At the last one, I did a Paleolithic lecture, and I don't know how many people I've told to eat this way, or healthcare professionals I've told, and to go to investigate it. And again, I've never had anyone come back to me and go, it doesn't work. Every single time, it's always positive. And sometimes with autoimmune patients where lives are completely changed. And I've got loads of case studies of that, as have many other people now who have adopted this approach.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that, that's why I tell people it's not going to harm you. Depending, I've had people who have been unsuccessful on the paleo diet, to be honest with you, but it wasn't like catastrophic. What they had
when
to do
you
is
say unsuccessful, what was the lack of success?
For people who had thyroid issues, they weren't getting enough fat, and it was just tweaking. So the diet worked. They just had to tweak it, and you never have this where someone just goes off the rails. And actually, I found out someone recently who said they weren't successful. Well, the person teaching them the diet was teaching it wrong. So you can't blame the diet. The template was correct. They were just teaching the wrong template. And that kind of leads me into,
I mean, a lot of the criticism out there sometimes is they love to create their own version of it, or put words in people's mouths. And, if they're going to some internet site with someone that doesn't really have credentials to be talking about it, that's just bad behavior. That's just, cherry picking something they can, slap down. If they truly go to those that are in the know and know what's going on, we've always said there's a very varied, the plant substance ratios paper that Loren wrote. I mean, it varies all the way, from very heavy plant-based, but for the majority it would have been more meat-based. But there's a recognition that there is a spectrum of animal protein versus plant protein in the populations during that time. And so to me, it's just that template. And I always encourage people to kind of listen to their bodies and go, look, if you're sitting at dinner and you're having salmon and a salad and you finish and you're craving more salmon, have more salmon. I've never restricted any calories. I tell people just listen to what their bodies are wanting them to do.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I actually just gave a lecture at a college today, and it was based on the paleo diet and some of the major principles. And I got into that. Actually, a couple of people asked me, and they go, well, does this diet work for everyone? And I went, well, yes, to a point. It's a template, though, and I had to explain that to him that, we all come with genetic differences. We come from different ethnic backgrounds, and in the States, we're a big-time melting pot. So it's hard to even, kind of come to the point of what was your diet ancestrally for your family, because we don't know anymore, because we've kind of, for a simpler term, interbred. We have a lot of crossing of people who had lived in a different part of the world with another part, and now you can't truly figure out what your true diet is or was. And so it's a big experiment, and I do the same thing. I say, listen to your body. Some people thrive on more carbs, but usually in the form of not starchy carbs, but in the form of, more vegetables, not like, legumes, and grains.
I've yet to see anyone not succeed with a version of a paleo diet, meaning I've never seen anyone not survive without grains, legumes, or dairy. It's more just the macronutrient tweaking.
Yep.
And obviously, and here's an interesting one, when you start to look at the allergies to paleo foods, obviously there's some of the nightshade ones which are obviously talked about in autoimmune diseases. But even for some people, shellfish could be there and go, well, crikey, that would be a great paleo food. But I think a lot of those allergies are developed over time. I don't think they are initial that cause it. So I think those are more gut permeability intolerances versus perhaps a receptor driven, like a lectin through the epidermal growth factor in the stomach getting into the systemic system. So I think some of those can be, in other words, what I've seen people that have allergies to, say, shellfish, once we've kind of cleaned their gut up and they get healthier, they go back and reintroduce some foods that are paleo that were causing them problems, and they're no longer causing problems.
Yeah, and I find that as well. And I tell people that you know, your sensitivities are going to change. There's going to be foods that you thought you were tolerant to that you're no longer tolerant to, and foods that you thought you could never eat again that you can eat again with no problem. And probably the simplest one is always cheese. That's always a big one. You know, people, you know, they always go, well, I'm lactose intolerant and I can't eat that. And I go, well, yeah, yes and no. I know cheese is a big no-no in paleo, but I'm a primal guy, so I always say, you know, a little dairy is fine here and there. It's not going to kill you, but I don't tell them to eat it 2 times a day like Chris Kresser did. You know, it's more of, you know, if you were to go out in nature and we would slaughter a pregnant animal, you know, there would be animals that we would get that would be pregnant. And I'm sure we didn't just let the milk go to waste. I'm sure if it was there, we used it. You know, but it wouldn't be all. It wouldn't be all the time. You know, it would be on a rare.
In my lecture, I've got a picture of a woman sucking on the teat of a cow. I should pull it up for you or send it. You could maybe have it as the picture for it. I did at the World Golf Fitness Summit, and I totally forgot. And I had this slide on behind me for a good 2 or 3 minutes as I'm talking about dairy consumption, and I suddenly looked at some people that sort of going, could you change the slide? I realized that's sort of a bit of an offensive slide, but it's to make the point, you know, how natural is that? So I think going to, you just said, you know, you said I'm a primal guy, right?
Yeah.
Is that the term you use? So it's interesting for me to recently kind of see this, okay, paleo versus primal and the 80-20 and all the rest of it. And I'm like, and you know, I've seen the criticism, you know, of some to Loren, like, you know, he's too strict, he's too this, or they're too you know, extreme or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so if this 80-20 is okay, you realize in his very first book, he talks about level 1, 85-15, level 2, 90-10, level 3, 95-10. And if you're seeing success on 85-15, great. You know, so to me, the way that this, I've always looked at this from day one when it made sense. It's like, okay, you know, you got to live. I remember a friend of mine when I was really into this and I was playing rugby, and he was a kid from Oklahoma, and he was, put your best Southern drawl on it, or Oklahoma drawl, and he was just like, Smithy, I'm damned if I want to eat a bunch of food I don't like just to live a few more years to eat that same food I don't like. Yeah. And I sort of laughed, and it's funny, you know, and you might say that in your 20s, later on you might not. But, you know, so that, to the point of that is, you know, I don't want people, if it's just horrible for them and they just can't overcome certain cravings, or they don't enjoy it and they're miserable, crikey, we're very complex creatures. You could maybe argue the endorphin release from eating foods that they like could override the benefit. You know, so I'm all for going, look, here's a template. See how you do on this template. If you're not getting healthier, I'd suggest you go stricter. If you're still fine, you may even try being more lenient. You can play around that sliding scale, but the diet forms a template to what I believe, and I think the research support, it's optimal nutrition. So, and it's a very simple thing to do. I think if you take, and again, if we were to say, so we can all talk on the same page, let's just take one person. Let's take Loren's book, his diet book, the recipe book. Mm-hmm. Let's all go, and if you're critical of the paleo diet, go in and take any of those diets and show me how you can improve them by adding in grains, dairy, or legumes. And what I mean by that is we'll go and then do a dietary analysis all the way down to the minerals, the vitamins, the omega-6, omega-3 ratio, you know, every little bit, the acidity, the alkalinity, all the rest of it, and see how do you lose by doing that. I don't think you do. And I think it's easy to demonstrate that. Now, the question is, if you enjoy those other foods, do you need to be that strict? Yeah, it's the $1 million question. Well, I think that can be self-determined, and that's what I encourage my clients to do. I actually have had, I do slightly differently. I actually have an 80-15-5. Okay. Because I actually think there are 3 groups. There's paleo. Okay. There is non-paleo unprocessed, and then there's processed. Gotcha. So to me, I say to people, you know, beer, chips, pizza, you know, but that's your 5%. So now we're a little lower. So, you know, brown rice and, potatoes potentially, some cheese would be in there. That stuff in the industrial revolution, foods that weren't really messed around with too much, but they're not paleo. So it fits a kind of 15% category. I think they're better than a lot of the processed foods, don't have the artificial sweeteners in them. Heaven knows, hopefully don't have GMO in them and things like that. So that's kind of the one I've done with a lot of people, and it allows them a little bit of cheating outside of paleo, but still stay a little bit healthier, and then, hey, enjoy yourself, be sane.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people too. When they always go, that paleo diet, it's so strict. And I go, yeah and no. I went, you have to be strict in the beginning because we got to clean everything up. Right. We got to get you past that hump and get you through the detox. And, I always tell them, give me 30 days. Do
you have to be strict, or is it better to be strict? I would say it's better to be strict.
Better to be strict, exactly.
I've had people still takes them longer, but even going kind of an 80-20 when they're very unhealthy. Listen, I say when I look at that, paleo, non-paleo, unprocessed, if I say someone's goal is 80-15-5, right now they might be 5-15-80. I mean, there are those people out there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's move them to 50-25-25. We're going to see a huge change in their health. Yep. And that's one of the big issues about sometimes picking research studies showing, I've shown that grain consumption can help health. Yeah, if you introduce, steel cut oats ahead of, the latest Fruit Loops for breakfast, I would expect to see an improvement in health. Yeah, duh.
Yeah, exactly. It always depends what that baseline is, and you can, and you've been in it. You've done research. You can tweak research any way you want. You can cherry pick it any way you want to prove a point. I think it's more. I always tell people I go by experience and feel. There's great research out there, but the way to justify the research is show it works in in everyday people. That pretty much solidifies the theory. And with that, I mean, there's been a lot of people who have are jumping in because they see an opportunity in the paleo world, and they're calling themselves experts. And, they're tweaking the template, adding in starchy carbs, everything's got honey in it. Legumes are back in. Now they're throwing in dairy. And I think it's caused a lot of confusion. What are your thoughts on some of that?
At the end of the day, the diets that they're probably working with are a hell of a lot better than people are eating now. They just need to call it,
something
John's
else.
diet or Mary's diet and a tagline based off the initial paleo diet, something like that. But just don't call it the paleo diet that creates that confusion. And that's annoying to me a little bit. So
yeah, it's funny. We come to the same point. People think I'm some hardcore. I got called a couple names, and that I was just kind of like a cult leader and all this because I just said no. What I'm arguing for is that it's the term they're using. I have no problem with what they're teaching. I mean, some of it I don't agree with, but that's fine. They don't agree with everything I say either. That's how the world works. But they were misdefining the term and changing the term, and I don't think they had the credibility and background to change the term. I mean,
well, I think at the end of the day, they why are we all doing this? I'm doing this. Listen, I love living. I love life, and I want to live a long, healthy, happy life, disease-free, hopefully. And I enjoy it. I don't really buy cheese in my house, but if I go to a party and I'm having a glass of red wine and there's some cheese there, I'll probably have some cheese. I'll probably indulge, but it's not a staple of my diet.
Yep.
Now, I can't remember the last time I went to a doctor. I'm disease-free, have no issues. I can assure you, if I suddenly had something happen to me and I go to the doctors, I'm diagnosed with MS, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going strict paleo for a while to see if that's going to be the solution. That would be my go-to solution for any disease state, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with you. Anytime I've ran into snags in my life, far as things don't seem right, I just make my diet a lot more strict and go back to the really strict paleo template and see if that solves it first. And then kind of go from there, because it cures a lot of issues, a lot of what they call disease. It's funny, they define it as disease, but I don't know if I would call it a disease, because it's actually a self-perpetuated sickness is what I call it through poor diet. Disease is would be technically more something you're born with in a gene or gene expression or in your genetics, as opposed to.
You could say the disease is a manifestation of the illness progressing to a disease, perhaps, that was by the bad nutrition in the first place. But there's a really, one of the things that really made me sort of just go wow about the human body, and was a case study with MS that I mentioned earlier, and she was pretty bad, wheelchair bound, and she was about to go on an experimental drug. And it's interesting, if you look at the methodology of the experimental drug, basically they're trying to get proteins into the system that would basically get those antibodies to not attack the self but attach to the drug. Really and truly, the concept of the Paralytic Diet would be to go, well, let's not put the stimulating foods in the diet in the first place, because it typically is like a three-way mimicry. There's usually what we typically have seen, like a three-way mimicry where there's perhaps been a viral attack at some point that would have stimulated the immune system, and then you've really got to have a constant stimulus, which isn't necessarily the virus. The virus may not even be with them anymore. And then there's mimicry between those three. And the haplotype, the type of, and this is where the genetic factor comes in, where one person it would affect and another person wouldn't, is how that immune system grabs that protein to present to the immune system. Based on the haplotype, it can grab it in different places. So that's then all of a sudden, in some people, it'll look the same and the body starts attacking itself, and other people it won't. So it's a hugely complex thing. But in this particular case with this lady, one time I met with her, and it was interesting actually, because the lady that she was with had, the reason we had this meeting, she had a friend with fibromyalgia, and there was obviously the many thought processes of that being autoimmune. So I was explaining the concept of the diet. You're basically going to eliminate processed foods, grains, dairy, and legumes. And as soon as she heard dairy, she thought, oh, there's no way I can do that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You could try eliminating just the grains and legumes, and if that's the offending thing, you might get lucky, but we won't know unless you get better. So my advice would be to eliminate all three. But in that meeting, the other lady with MS had mentioned something about you can't eat green beans, and I mistakenly at that time said, no, hang on, I think you're fine with green beans. And that was a stupid error on my part, because the genus of it's a legume, right?
Yep.
But I was thinking more plant-based, and it's certainly not as acidic as a normal sort of hard bean, but it's still genetically it's got the same genes. She goes home and eats green beans because she loved them, and went big, sort of spiraling out of control, tingling in her joints, couldn't walk, gait was affected, and we're like, sorry. So she cleans herself up and she's fine. So we're like, okay, no legumes for her. We were then looking at, with MS, trying to help regenerate the myelin sheath, and there had been some research in the UK looking at high DHA levels helping with myelin sheath regeneration. So, and at that time I was not really up on working with reputable companies with supplementation, and this would be kind of where now you get sort of functional medicine coming in post that. Paleo on its own isn't going to be able to do that regeneration necessarily, so that's where supplementation might be very good. She goes off to the health food store, gets some DHA, takes 2 pills, and has this same reaction that when she ate the legumes. And the sort of initial comment Loren was saying, I wonder if it can affect the fatty acid ratio, and we're like, wait a minute. 2 pills. No, that's not going to affect the fatty acid ratio. I'm like, hang on a minute. Let's get those pills. Let's see what else might have been in there. And of course, lipids, they darken the gelatin for oxidative purposes. And the company had said that they had darkened the gelatin capsule with the herbal extract carob. Carob is a bean extract. Yep. And so 2 little pills. So and again, I'd say if it's not that, we understand kids have peanut allergies, it's a short-term effect, then a different effect, I think, can cause longer term, sort of lower level, not an anaphylactic type shock that you would get with that, but potentially, just as debilitating in a long term setting. And that's what we found with her. And so she cleaned that back out. And this is a lady who, she'd get up out of bed, put a load of laundry in, and that was it for the day. Energy levels low. She chose not to go on that experimental drug and went with the paleo. It made sense to her, and she did it. And she referred back to us that she was able to, she'd go to the movies, she wanted to have popcorn, she knew she shouldn't. She would almost find tolerance levels. She said, I could have 3 pieces of popcorn, but if I had 5, I was in trouble, which I thought was kind of interesting. But she said, if I have a piece of toast, I'm done. I've got tingling in my thing. And, there'd be some people saying, oh, it's psychosomatic. But we did enough work with her long term that to me, it was very real. But she improved tremendously, where she was walking on a treadmill 5 miles a day. She was able to drive cross country, take her son to the swim meets, and her life changed dramatically.
Yeah, That's an incredible story. Yeah, I think we've all had these people who didn't believe, and once they got on the diet and really stuck to it and made the changes, they're pretty the profound changes in their life. They're blown away. They can't believe, and it happens fairly quickly. It takes time for your body to adapt, and I always tell people, it's at least 12 to 18 months to get a good adaptation and where you're kind of at a good point, and then another year or so for everything to kind of settle in, your immune system to catch up. But with that, I noticed recently a guy named Alan Aragon at the National Strength and Conditioning Association. He went on kind of a rant and basically gave a whole presentation about debunking the validity of the paleo diet. What is your response to that?
Yeah, we had talked briefly that you wanted my thoughts on that, and I had said to you I had seen it. So first off, I'll say that I'm going to do a thorough analysis of that. So I don't want to throw him under the bus completely just yet. I'll point out a couple of things that I might challenge him on that I've in my first kind of glance. And to actually, all of the paleo critics, I think that this is what I would ask. Because, again, I'm out here trying to make people healthy. I work clinically. If we can improve it, I'm all ears. I've got no skin in this that I couldn't turn around one day and go, wow, I can't believe we were wrong on that.
Yeah.
So I'm open, But I've yet to see anyone with a really good debunking. The first thing that they tend to do is create their own version of what paleo is or create their own things. So I would say to the listeners, and I'll talk about Alan in a second on a couple of points, but it's a similar looking sort of argument to the Christina Warner TED lecture. So I did a very, very in-depth, I know Rob Wolf did one, Loren did one, I think a little bit. No, actually I don't think Loren did one, but Rob did, other people did.
Yeah.
But I think I perhaps put a little bit more time in because I was so incensed by it. And I literally went line by line on this thing and I picked it apart. And I'm going to do the same with Alan and give him what it deserves is a thorough look at to see some of his claims and research them properly. I'll say today what I think I will probably find. But I would encourage people to go listen to that Christina Warner lecture on TED. And if they go, so this is one of the projects that I'm working on right now, and that was the first real piece that I did for this off the mark. So I'm Mark, it's off the mark, but it's also kind of, listen, it's not a journalistic, I'm right down the middle. I'm going to have an opinion, but it's kind of also persuade me I'm wrong. So I'm open to be shown I'm wrong, but I want to really go through and analyze in great detail each point by point, and that's what I did with her. And obviously what she did in that was build up, a complete fabrication of what I see as the paleo diet, and I just went through. But, what I did in a circumstance there, she started talking about the archaeological record. That's what her background is. So I reached out to someone with far more experience than her to get his experience. And it turns out he completely, slammed her for what she had said. So I think her whole thing was, let's just pick up what I want and make an entertaining lecture. And I think that just does a disservice when I have seen this diet help so many people. Let's have some honest intellectual debate. Don't, put a picture up of a caveman and big fatty meat when that doesn't represent necessarily what the paleo diet is. So that was annoying to me. And I think, so if you want to see that, go to offthemark.org. That's kind of a website in creation. So right now it just goes to a Facebook page, but you can see that post there on that. You can look at it. You can listen to her lecture first, which I would encourage you to do, and then you can see my rebuttal. So coming back to Alan, actually the first thing he did an interview with PaleoMovement.com, Karen Pendergrass, and she asked something about what annoys you about the paleo movement or whatever, and he made a point that especially I think it was something to the effect of like extreme points, like even Cordain, I found that he'd put potatoes on the list. He's like, are you kidding me? A nutrient dense whole food off the table is, I think he said something like whole potato. That's just some funny sarcastic comment, and I just sort of go, okay, he tries to put himself out there as this, big research-based guy and everything. Well, you know what? Rather than just have a flippant comment like that, why don't you go to Chapter 8 of Dr. Cordain's latest book, The Paleo Answer, which to me is his best work by far, and go through that chapter and explain to us where he's wrong on that, as opposed to this sarcastic, because your average person reading that might just go, yeah. The average person looking at Christina Warrener's lecture without the knowledge you or I might have will get swayed by that because they're creating their own arguments to critique something that we're not saying. So that was the first comment I'd make. Like, if Alan wants to gain credibility in the scientific community about ancestral eating, he needs to step his game up and not just pick what he wants to knock down. Go to the top guy. Go to Loren and let knock down bit by bit his thing. So let's say he might say, well, I did that in this lecture with the NSCA. So he's got claims versus evidence, all right, on his Title 1. He's got cherry-picking the culprit. In one of the slides, he mentions that, since the sort of advent of the industrial and digital revolution, activity levels have gone down considerably. That could play a major part. And it's, what does he say? It's odd that these important periods of history are ignored by paleo diet proponents. I don't think they've been ignored at all. Loren even wrote a paper on Paleolithic sort of exercise and looking at the comparisons of modern day. And of course that plays a part in it. And he's saying that as opposed to blame the 10,000 year. And it's like, that's not what we've said. It's all part of the equation. So there's, and it's ironic that his title was cherry picking when I think that's exactly what he does. He then goes on, he says grains and legumes are unhealthy and should be avoided. That's quote unquote the claim. He's then got a convergence of evidence from observational research, 8 to 14, and experimental research, 15 to 24. So I first kind of just looked at, I'm going to need to go into this in more detail, but 15 to 24. But here's what my first thought was, and we kind of alluded to it earlier. I can find, in the big scheme of things, you go to PubMed. I mean, there's so many papers out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When, to find 15 to 24, so you're looking at 9 references there that have shown a positive, as he said, have shown multiple therapeutic and protective health benefits of whole grain and legume consumption, including improved blood lipid profile, glucose control, reduction of inflammation, and reduced risk of stroke and coronary heart disease. Okay, I probably don't doubt that those papers exist, but it still doesn't change what would be optimal and whether or not paleo would get those results even better. Because I'm sure all those studies are doing is taking the typical American diet and we're basically improving it, which in let's say they did a Mediterranean diet. Well, that's going to have grains and legumes in it. And obviously, I'm going to be the first to go, yeah, the Mediterranean diet compared to the standard American diet is a good diet. I would argue that the paleo diet is better. And even though he wants to criticize it, of course, Lindenberg's study did show that when they compared that. So, he's got a reason why he wants to critique that, and I'll get into that in a bit more detail when I write my rebuttal on that. That was that one. The one thing that did really strike me as odd, though, that something he said was, with the dairy claims, he's got, who gets to decide which parts of the cow we should consume? It's perfectly paleo to eat the cow's muscles, but not the milk that laid the foundation for the growth of those same muscles. Illogic abounds in this claim, and I'm actually scratching my head, and I'm going, no, that's the illogical part. That's the whole point, Alan. Did we consume the milk in primitive times? I don't think the evidence is there that we did.
Yeah. If
you're out in the wild, what would you eat? Would you be going and sucking on the cow's teat? I doubt that, so I don't think that's illogical at all. And again, we can argue all of this stuff until we're blue in the face about the archaeological record and all this kind of stuff. Well, I've done paleo lectures at evangelical churches a number of times. I don't talk about the evolutionary part. I sort of briefly mention the term Paleolithic, and I kind of smile and go, I understand that's probably not something you guys are going to be interested in listening to. So let's say we got lucky with this template. Let's examine the template as it sits today with modern research. And modern research supports it's pretty damn healthy. So tell me what's wrong with lean protein, vegetables, fruits, and nuts and seeds. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I think the best Alan came up with, I will give him credit though, that is ironic when we're making whey protein.
Yeah.
Well, I will concur with him on that. But he had a thing, what was his point here? Oh, yeah. So one of the things, achieving a healthy diet, ignoring the rules of fad diets. And let's stop calling the paleo diet a fad diet. I've been eating this way or having it as my template since 1988 when I'm at Loren. It's not a fad diet. It's here to stay. There's millions of people benefiting from it. Like, it's going to be here. So let's stop using the term fad. There's nothing fad about it at all. Ignoring the rules of fad diets and sticking with foods that fit your personal preference and tolerance. I would question that. I mean,
yeah.
Personal preference and tolerance. I've got lots of clients whose personal preference is Fruit Loops. Well, I'm sorry, you're going to agree with that? That's, you know, and tolerance, yeah, to a certain extent, but personal preference, I think. I mean, I get what he's saying, but I think a lot of what he's done in here, the studies, I didn't really talk about that. The grain studies, he's saying there's no evidence that grains are bad for us or causes inflammation, and cites those experimental studies showing benefits. And what I failed to mention, which we mentioned earlier, I think all we're seeing there is the improvement, or did I already say this? It's just an improvement on that bad diet, right? So we would see those benefits. I did say that, now I remember. But here's the point. Why is he not mentioning, he's got to be aware of Loren's paper, Humanity's Double-Edged Sword, explaining, hey, we've gone down a path with reliance upon grains, so we should really understand the health implications of that. There are 342 references in that paper, okay, talking about negative consequences of grains. Here's a recent one in the journal Nutrients, all right? Don't think they're paleo guys. They just have done a paper, the dietary intake of wheat and other cereal grains and their role in inflammation. Again, we look in the back here, we've got 78 references in this one. So that's what he needs to do. He needs to go in and do a review paper, because these are review papers, and review papers are just that. They look at everything, and I think he's cherry-picked some that show a benefit to his argument. So that's my first sort of feel of it. You know, he talks about his success with his high client base. I'm not doubting. He's obviously been very successful with his athletic base, but I mean, I think we saw what Michael Phelps was eating. He looks pretty lean and strong, and yet was eating a diet that the average American would die of a heart attack from. So, you know, again, that'd be really hard to show that sometimes working with athletes, you know, would a paleo diet make it better? There are a lot of athletes starting to do it now. But they're so good and there's so much based on the skill level, it would be hard to show, you know, how a diet that would be Alan's diet versus a paleo diet would be very different. So to just show a bunch of pictures of, you know, great-looking athletes, and I work with these athletes, hey, well done, but doesn't make anything in terms of debunking the paleo diet.
There's so many other factors when it comes to athletes, especially that most athletes tend to be young. So their bodies are much more resilient and can take a heck of a lot more punishment. And we see also, you could also do a study on what the detrimental effects of those diets were once they got older. You know, once they hit their 30s, most of them, you know, football players die of heart attacks in their early 50s, late 40s. You know, so there's a whole, you know, he's taken a microcosm of something that is, there's a much broader picture when you look at the totality of everything. And, you know, looking at athletes from that end, I mean, and they're burning, you know, like Michael Phelps was burning thousands and thousands of calories a day. So he can get away with it.
He's obviously a clever guy. So I would throw out a challenge to Alan and go, Alan, look, there are a lot of people eating this way now. So if you genuinely think, you know, it almost seems like his main gripe is he's created that most people that are paleo are extreme, or which, you know, maybe there are people out there that are that way, but hey, that's their right to be that way. You know, there are plenty of us that aren't extreme. You know, I consider myself paleo, but I've always been this 80-15-5 approach. So apparently I'm primal, not paleo. Whatever, right?
Yeah, all the terms.
It's all semantics to me. It's like the template is what I work off. So I would challenge someone like Alan to go to, again, we've got to have a sort of a starting point. So and why not Loren? He kind of was the sort of movement founder here. Go to that latest book, because I think that's his best work. That's just easier to do than just go buy all the papers, because it's referenced in there. Or if Alan's more of a research guy, go through here all his papers, critique the papers, all right, line by line, tell us what's wrong. And so do it in a much more scientific approach. He got very proud of himself that he finally got published his first paper in a journal, and he made a big deal out of it. Well, if you're a bright guy and you start doing this, maybe you can get some peer-reviewed stuff on paleo work, and then perhaps you get listened to a little bit more by the actual scientists in this field. Loren's published over 63 peer-reviewed papers on Paleolithic nutrition alone. In his book, this is what annoys me as well when Christina Warren, there's no research. With all due respect, and that's one of the things that really attracted me to Loren from day one, was nothing ever came out of his mouth unless it was backed up by a peer-reviewed piece of literature. So it really annoys me when people there's no research behind it. There is research behind it. You may disagree with that research, so tell us why. I'm all ears. But don't just say there's no research. There is. His book has 900 peer-reviewed references as you go through the text. I counted them because I wanted it in that rebuttal to Christina Warren. And when she put his book up on the background, it was sarcastically, it's all in, popular magazines and whatever. She's published 7 papers. 7. None of them are on Paleolithic nutrition. One has something to do with nutrition. And she's trying to debunk the likes of Loren. She then tried to, debunk the archaeological record. I call up Dr. Michael Richards, who's got 3 papers published in Nature. 1 paper would normally make a career with that. He's got something like 150 references. I can't remember the exact number, but, unbelievably established, and completely disagreed with them. And there she was on a high horse being sarcastic. And I just thought it was disgusting, to be honest with you. It was just, it's unworthy of someone that has a PhD from Harvard, that's for sure.
Well, when I watched it, I thought it was pure theatrics. She was just trying to pick low-hanging fruit. And because it was, at that time it was a little more, well, it's always been controversial, but at that time it was kind of a hot spot. And she just jumped on it. And when I watched it, it was like watching bad TV. Honestly, that's how I looked at it. It's like watching, a crappy reality show.
Well, I'm assuming. She's in that academic field. I'm assuming she's wanting to continue in that. I can assure you, I had some other comments from people that I shared that with who were like, "Wow, she's kind of not doing herself a service in the scientific community or something."
No, that's exactly what I thought too.
It was a bit embarrassing. What I ended up doing was, again, I had the respect to go, I'm not going to criticize that area where she certainly would know more about how these isotopic values are determined. Not my area. I've read a lot of it, and I essentially had come to the conclusion that the criticisms, they account for the, the variabilities and these potential variables. And indeed, that's exactly what Dr. Richards said. And, he then goes on, because he was traveling, ironically, to one of the top institutes in Switzerland for archaeological research. And so I said, well, I was in a hurry to get his viewpoint. So I literally, word for word, took the transcript of that one section and sent it to him. And he just, people can read it. But he was basically like, what she seems to fail to understand.
Yeah.
So it was almost like the teacher telling the student, good effort, but you don't quite fully understand this topic. So it was a mind-blowing. Another one that was, I read one time, some woman, and I'm like, you kidding me? They were criticizing Loren because his PhD was in exercise physiology. Okay. So that means if you get a PhD in something, you're never allowed to further your academic studies. A PhD is a research study more than anything, teaching you the method of research. So he's then gone on and he's found another niche of what he wanted to go into. I think more to the point is his peers have allowed him to publish 63 plus papers in the peer-reviewed literatures, and she comes up with a statement like that. And it's like, really? Come on.
Yeah, it is goofy. Well, and it's tough because we're an interesting group and we get punished here and there by people, but I just kind of let it roll off and I just go results are results, and that's what I thrive on with clients I have and how well they do, how well I've done. Proof's in the pudding, as simple as it gets, and you're right, it's not a fad. I tell people if you can do it long term and you don't have to starve yourself or take something in or out, and you can continue to maintain it and continue to maintain health, well, that's not a fad. A diet is something that you can only do for short term,
Yeah.
in order to get a certain result, but then you have to back out of it because actually it's physically detrimental. So, I mean, it's not a long-term solution. So, with that being said, there's, people right now, there's some talk, and me and you agree on this, we've talked about before, is how certain processed foods kind of fill the gap. We call them bridge foods. And one that we both fully believe in and use with clients is Julian Bakery's products and a lot of their paleo line. And like you talk about how you've been using those with clients.
Yeah, let's see how long it's been. Not that long. It was probably, I'd seen the paleo bread on Facebook. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. So I went out to a local store here and bought some of the almond bread. And it's interesting too how with some clients how their taste affects it. Those of us that I think have been doing paleo love every single product right away because there's no sugar high needed or anything else, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Whereas some of the clients, they're a little pickier. But the one product I haven't had anyone dislike yet is the paleo wraps, which is really true paleo. It's just coconut meat and coconut water.
Yeah.
And I've got one client right now who has fallen in love. I'm actually literally making him the wraps myself. He's a very busy client and travels a lot, and he was where it's been a great asset. He's been able to stop eating the sort of fast food on the road when he drives from the desert here to LA, and he's got these wraps, takes them with him, and he liked them so much they've now often become his kind of breakfast and lunch. So I make him egg wraps for his breakfast and his lunch, and he's not a guy that really cooks at home, and he eats out a lot, and said it's easy to eat paleo when you're out. Just change the menu, simply substitute anything that's non-paleo for fruits and veg, basically. And he's been doing that, and those products have helped him, lose 20-odd pounds, improve his blood lipids. Everything's great. He's loving it. The compliance is easier. You can certainly do a wrap with a kale leaf or bok choy or with many different lettuces. But for a lot of people, that doesn't do it for them. And I have to say, the paleo wraps are delicious.
Oh, yeah. I had a couple today.
Yeah. That's what I had for dinner, actually, right?
Yeah.
Right. Came on the air with you. So I'm thrilled that there are companies now like that. And Heath is, I think, doing a fantastic job, and he seems to be doing very well. I wish him all the best with that. I love the pizza. The first one we didn't do too well. And the second one, I made sure I really spread it thin, and that was great. So that's the almond and coconut. I think it's kind of a mix of almond and coconut, if I remember correctly, on the pizza crust.
I think it's arrowroot or arrowroot, and I think it is coconut. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. Well, anyway, we'll have to check that.
I'll have to check it. Yeah, I'll have to go look.
Yeah, and so the big ones I've had, the wheat thins, also the egg white protein, I've enjoyed. So all of those things, they're potentially perhaps. One might argue that some of them are in the 15%, not the 80% if they want to, if there's a few little things in that are impure. But, I mean, compared to their counterparts, I'm going, wow, what a difference. So I'm a big fan. I think they're good. And my clients have really adopted to them.
Well, I think it gives us a really good set of tools because me and you aren't in the food business. We're not going to go out and make paleo wraps. I don't have the ability to figure that out. And for me, it definitely makes it a lot easier because I have some, you get them too, the hard clients that they've been eating like crap for so long and really eating like crap. I mean, every meal is just garbage. And trying to coax them over and get them into the paleo template, just if you take them from 0 to 60, it just doesn't work because it's such a foreign or just a Martian territory from there. Like, I don't even know where to go with this. And with these foods, I have so much better luck with it because they taste good, they're healthier, they fit. They're almost all with the paleo name are all paleo. They're based on paleo principles, so they fit in.
Right.
So it's been, it's a good mix. Do you have anything going on right now you'd like to share, or got any projects?
I mentioned the offthemark.org is going to be something that could branch out into. I'm on the Titleist Performance Advisory Board, and they've got a TV station. It's still kind of building, and we might do a TV show with that sort of name to it and interview people. I'd love to get two people together. Would be Loren and a guy, Don Tolman, who's one of our advisory board members, big vegan guy. who, interestingly, first time I met him, we sat on a panel at a World Golf Fitness Summit, and really, and this is also something that I'd love to mention, or you see some of this sort of head-to-head stuff with vegans, paleo, and the irony of it is someone actually wrote a pretty good blog kind of going, we need to look at the commonality of ourselves, because, you know, we're all on board for eating fruits and vegetables. There's the only disagreement would be the meat. But I'm pretty sure most vegans would prefer the sustainable approach of what paleo advocates would do. So,
absolutely.
And Don, who's a fantastic speaker, you should look him up, and has this, I suppose, religious connotation to food with, and it's only really fruits and vegetables that this happens with, and some nuts. But he talks about, you know, it's interesting that the walnut has a hard outer shell, and you cut it in half and you look inside and it looks like a brain, and we now know the omega-3s are good for our brain. Yeah. And you've got a tomato, and we know the lycopene in tomato is good for the heart, and when you cut the tomato in half, it's got 4 chambers, just like the heart.
Is it
and
crazy?
it goes through this, the carrot, you just cut it in half, and the iris of the eye, and it's like starting to go, wow. And he goes on forever on this, and he's a big food historian in the, through societies and time. But my point of bringing that up is when we first met, Don simply said, I choose not to eat meat. But if you are going to, my suggestion is to make sure it's clean, as Mark just said. So we actually we bonded big time, and we were more, attacking, big sort of companies, putting GMO and artificial sweeteners. And that's where I think we all need to come together and, not worry too much about, I'm not going to change. If someone's choosing not to eat meat from a philosophical perspective, it doesn't matter how healthy I might think it'd be for their body. They're not going to do it. And they're not going to change my opinion at this point either. So, I think we should, bond more a little bit on those. So, kind of lost my train of thought. So, in terms of the project, that would be 2 people I would love to get together. Because Loren, obviously, unbelievable mind with so much research, and Don too, very knowledgeable with research, and take 2 opposing. But I wouldn't let them talk about fruits and vegetables. We all agree that's good.
Yeah,
I have to go heads to heads there, but that's part of it. And then I'm also working with kind of an approach for what we've seen with another colleague, very, very good clinical nutritionist, Dr. Oscar Kutsia, brilliant clinical nutritionist. And he kind of introduced me into sort of using some medical foods along with Paralytic nutrition. So you get someone with type 2 diabetes, they've got an A1C of like 11.3. We've found that we can speed up, like an acceleration, put them on a paleo diet, but with the medical foods, we can get to their, down to 6.3 or less much, much quicker using the medical foods. And, hey, some of them are rice-based, so, we've got to accept what's working clinically in that. But then it's along with the Paralytic Diet, and they go off. And that's mymedicalmeals.com is a project there. And then, there's always about 10 other projects on the plate. Out here in the desert, we're looking to put a new center in here with another colleague. So there's lots going on. So.
Yeah, well, that's great. I really enjoyed talking with you and having you on. I'm sure everyone who follows me will really enjoy the conversation too, because it got to the nuts and bolts of kind of where the paleo diet came from. And I interviewed Loren a couple weeks back. I think it's a great supplement to what he talked about, because it is what you do is different. I mean, you're taught by him, but you're in a different place now and you do different things, but it all goes back to the original research and what we all believe in, and that's the paleo template. So I think it's a pretty interesting way to to kind of fill that circle in. So with that being said, well, thanks again, and I hope to have you on again sometime.
That would be wonderful, Gary. I appreciate you having me on, and I think we probably have some other things. I've got a list here of, I don't know, about 2 or 3 hours worth of chatting we could talk about. So.
Oh, excellent. Alrighty, well, I will talk to you later, and you have a good one.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.